live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Yes, it's Chris Potter's laughter. What a wonderful way to begin anything. Jeez. Hello, everybody. It's Friday the 13th, and we have not said that all year. We have not said that. Where did I just see this? Look at this. The last Friday the 13th was July 13th of 2012.
My God!
Isn't that interesting? No.
No.
It is not particularly. So it was 14 months ago. And it seems to me there's some years where it's like every other week is Friday the 13th. What is the word for fear of Friday the 13th?
Triskaidekaphobia, I think is
Good for you.
That's the fear of the number
right.
13, I think.
Triskaidekaphobia. So I saw you tweeting about the fact that when you saw that potentially one of your former students was called before the grand jury. Yeah. Okay, so the grand jury that's desperately looking for some reason to indict our mayor. I almost said our former mayor, but essentially that would have been correct too. Luke Ravenstahl called his girlfriend, I don't know, ex, current, whatever. Yeah. And they said that she was a graduate of Allegheny College.
She was a 2009 graduate of Allegheny College.
Were you teaching there then?
No, but I mean, I stopped, and that was one of the things I was trying to remember is when exactly I stopped. And I think the last semester that I taught was spring of 2005. But she was also a communications major, and the class I taught was basically Intro to Journalism.
Oh, so you might.
So that would be one of the credits that you needed, at least when I taught.
It just seems like you're not old enough. She
wasn't. But there was a minute where I was kind of like.
She's too young or too old?
Yeah, I think she's too young. She would have started the fall after I left.
And anyway, when I saw
which is a shame because there is a unit in my class where we spend the class talking about how you should not date the mayor. So she really missed a chance.
Well, but she wasn't in the journalistic end. She's a sales rep.
Yeah, right.
Or as they call them, account executives, which is the stupidest. Right. That is as stupid as domestic engineer or, say, come on, account. When I first got into the business and heard so-and-so is an account executive, I thought, that I should, immediately defer to this person. And then it turned out to be some pimply kid with, not a clue.
Yeah.
Account executive.
Yeah.
What?
You learned that lesson
in lieu of pay, we're going to give you a really grandiose
and we're going to call you an associate. That's the other thing. That's all. You always know you're about to get reamed sideways when somebody's like, calling you an associate. That's what they call them at Walmart.
Or for that matter, a vice president.
Right. Very true. I mean, I gotta say, I feel for Luke Ravenstahl. That guy's living my nightmare, which is having all of your exes called before a grand jury. I mean, look, my wife's probably listening to this, and so I don't want to go too far down this path. But that would be you want to talk about an open-ended investigation? Would be every ex of mine who has a grievance.
Well, usually
not since the Kefauver hearings, I mean, holy
usually if they're exes, they do. Well, that's not true. I was going to say if they're exes, they have grievances. That's not true.
No,
because most of my exes are friends.
Yeah. My boss, my predecessor here was the same way. Always, I never understood that.
Yeah, right. even my ex-husband. I mean, I adore him. Yeah. I don't believe in ex. There's only one.
Only one what?
Ex that I really
have a grievance
can't
with.
stand.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there was one other, but he's dead. Sorry.
Not by your hand, I
No.
trust. There's just an evident relish there.
No.
Oh,
That's
dear.
a great story, but I can't go there. Even I exercise some editorial judgment about
Right.
my personal life.
Okay. I'll try to respect that.
Poor Jess is dying over there.
Yeah.
She's got what's known as a summer-fall cold.
Yeah.
It's a nasty thing to have.
Yeah, she can just stay on that side of the
Yeah,
thing
stay
over
there and direct your sputum that away. Jeez. Okay. So.
Yeah.
Okay, I got a few things.
Okay. Good, because it's going to be a little hard to pick up the pace after direct your sputum that away.
How does a guy who shoots 6 or 7 bullets
Yep.
into another guy in front of witnesses
Yeah.
get bail?
I think a lot of people, you're referring, I believe, to the shooting in Bloomfield.
Yes, and the guy we're
involving the accused is
a Pittsburgh police officer. Excuse me?
Yeah, might be your answer right there. I mean,
That's unbelievable. I'm sorry.
As his attorney says, the evidence did not arise to a first-degree murder. So, hey, bail's cool, but it is a little. I don't want to talk out of turn because I haven't looked to see like what the average bail is for that set of charges. But it was $50,000, I think, and you pay 10% of that
He had to
bond.
come up with 5%.
$5,000, which does not really seem like a lot of money.
And he just blew away a guy.
Yeah. And the representation made of the widow of the guy she killed was he gets drunk and he kind of gets like this, which is also not terribly reassuring to know.
Because I mean, if you're facing jail and you're a cop and you're sitting at home and your future's looking bleak, you can see you might start drinking.
Yeah.
Right.
Now he will apparently be wearing an ankle bracelet.
Oh, big deal.
If that makes you feel better.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. It is one of those things where had that not been a police officer,
you doubt that would be the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I have years ago, we've probably talked about this before, but I gave up years ago on any expectation that the justice system really applies to police officers the way it does to the rest of us. Let's remember the famous case of Paul Abel, the guy who was down on the South Side, police officer, off duty, celebrating his wife's birthday, has a few beers in him, somehow ends up pistol whipping and accidentally shooting a guy on the street, apparently in a wacky case of mistaken identity. And the judge says, well, it's really not my job to police the police department. Even though you're off duty, you could still have legitimately seen yourself as being charged with the responsibility to maintain public order. And you thought you were getting some other guy who apparently accosted you previously. And so, sure, you shot this guy.
Totally?
He faced no criminal charge as a result of that, and then was, I think, reinstated to the police department as a result of that.
Where he still is a proudly serving member?
Yes. Yeah.
Jeez.
So, who's to say? I mean, it's hard to imagine this going down in quite the same way, but, nothing surprises me.
No.
Nothing surprises me when it comes to this stuff.
All right. So, I mean, but you have to admit, I'm not the only one who looked at that.
Yeah, no. I think we all were just kind of like,
oh, God. Okay, so here's something I don't understand at all.
Okay.
But it's so cool. So this little device that we rocketed into space.
Oh. Okay. This is going to be about a toaster or what? I couldn't see what you were holding there. So,
actually, it's as large as a
small car.
Small car. Yeah. Okay, so we push this small car into space in 1977.
Yes.
Where were you in 1977?
I was 7 years old. I was in first grade. So
Jess did not exist.
It's hard to conceive of a world where Jess did not exist.
I know.
That was the barbarous time in which we were living in the 1970s.
Where was
and the
I?
music reflected that.
I was a crack I was a crack television reporter and weekend weather girl living on a pig farm in Mazomanie, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So we've all placed ourselves now. That was 1970, and I was married at the time. This was 1977. And we shot that
Gas
thing.
cost 97 cents, and tearing up the charts was this number by Leo Sayer.
So we, I guess that we must have made a big deal about this going up. But, I mean, the fact is, it's been up there all that time, and it apparently now has broken free of our solar system. Yike!
Yeah. Well, the real worrisome part is those of us who've seen the movie, the first Star Trek feature film, know what's going to happen. Which is that it's going to end up at the center of some galaxy-destroying, like, black hole thing and come back and try to wipe us all out. And there's going to be bald women in space. That's what I remember that movie. But yeah, no, you know what was interesting about that to me was apparently there's like this big debate about where interstellar space actually begins. And it's like, does it have to do with like where the solar wind gets overwhelmed by the interstellar wind?
Interstellar wind, that's what I wanted to say, but now they're not so sure.
Yeah.
Well, how are we supposed to know? It's so far out there. That maybe we'll learn a little bit more. But I was reading this. They put a little graphic in the paper to help explain where it was and where it had been. And I am blown away by people who comprehend this.
Yes.
Okay, we have something called the heliosheath.
Yeah.
Oh, shut up. What do you think? That's a brand of
That's just the first thing I thought when I saw that. Somebody is missing a major marketing opportunity.
Get your helio sheath.
You know, the little editor needs a...
love you, man. You got on your helio sheath.
With special warming action.
Yes, right. Okay.
Jess is about to direct her sputum this way.
Involuntarily.
Yes.
Right?
I think it goes about,
Okay, so bow shock.
Yes.
Okay, shockwave. This is out at the front of a. Okay, so this is a shockwave of ionized gas formed as the heliosphere moves through interstellar space. Yeah. According to recent observations, the solar system may not be moving fast enough to create one. So we might not have this shock. It's like a sonic boom, I suppose. We're not moving fast enough when we... I don't understand any of this. Yeah, I do not comprehend a thing.
When you look at, and then you look at this graph, which is great. I mean, it was a good job they did. But, I mean, if you're like me or Lynn, the first thing you see is like...
a spur.
So you mean, maybe if you're like Lynn, that's what you see. I looked at it and I said, so you mean our entire solar system looks like the Pittsburgh Spirit Major Indoor Soccer League logo from back in the 1970s? That's what I thought. It was just like, oh, look, it's 1977. Or it was like a soccer ball with like a swoosh sort of thing coming off of it. But yeah, no, it's very interesting. Like where exactly does all this stuff end? I mean, I don't know what I thought.
Listen, see, I mean,
like 1 minute you're in the solar system. I thought like once you went past Pluto's orbit, that was it. You were out of the solar system.
Well, but the article says that, as far as they know, it might have broken through a year ago. They really don't know, but they know for sure that it's out there now.
No, they don't. If you look at the end, some other guy's like, well, I think we should wait for blah, 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 blah. The polarities have not reversed.
Okay, stop and think of where we're talking about. We're talking about how many billions of miles from the sun?
Yeah. 11 something or
11.5 billion miles from the sun. Think of this little car. I just keep seeing a little car.
Yeah. Beep, beep.
Out there in that huge
with the radio tunes to the Light FM WLTJ.
No, the one thing it'll get, no matter where it is KDK. Like, right-wing radio.
Right. Which, actually, if you think about it, Rush Limbaugh's voice is radiating out
Yeah.
into the interstellar void at 186,000 miles a second. So,
But okay, so here's what the heliosphere is. I'll get
Yeah.
off this in a minute for those of you who can't handle science at all. Extended bubble. It's an extended bubble of solar wind particles that extends far past the orbits of the planet. So
Yeah.
it's past your
Yeah.
Pluto
Yeah.
orbit. This bubble takes on the shape of a long windsock. That's why it looks that way. Of a long windsock. Where am I? Of a long windsock as it moves with the sun
Yeah.
through interstellar space. Okay. God! How do you, I don't know. So this little thing, this little is it solar powered?
no, it runs on a plutonium reactor.
Because it can't. It's so far away from the sun now.
Yeah,
it
it couldn't even. That's right. It
Okay,
couldn't
so
even pick
it's
it up.
run on a what?
It's a plutonium. It's a nuclear
that can keep
reactor.
it's going to keep going forever.
It says, I think it said in the story that it eventually the plutonium decays to a point where it won't be able. This is to me the neatest thing is it's beaming back stuff right now.
I know,
which is like great, and it takes like
doesn't 17 hours.
yeah.
Okay, so it beams back stuff. I thought it would take like 17 days or 17 hours.
Man, we're
that
stupid. We don't know
far
anything.
out, don't know anything. And what was the other thing that blew me away? Okay, so this got sent up in 1977. We were still listening to transistor radios then, okay? I mean, stop and think about the sort of what we would perceive now as archaic scientific capability that this little Voyager 1 has. I mean,
we had tied, but not tied with lemon fresh borax. That's how far this country has gone since then. So to answer your question, though, I think it shuts down like in about 10 or 12 years. Like, I think it said 2025. So at that point, it's just no longer able to get the juice up to get it back there. But I think what this taught me was one thing that we need is some kind of, there needs to be like a sign posted that says you are now leaving the solar system.
Yeah, right. Next
like we should put like a PennDOT. There's probably a PennDOT crew out there right now, just like driving out there, and they're getting time and a half for it. They're just like, and it will take them 17 billion years to get to the end of the thing.
Oh dear.
And they're all named Costa.
Okay, enough of this.
Okay.
All right. So anyway, I'm just blown away by
Ground
my.
control to Major Dom. Sorry, I'm done. That's all.
That's fun. Unless you're really following, the personnel in Pittsburgh city government.
Right, that
you
joke
didn't
made
get
no
that.
sense, but that's okay.
Right. So, but it's humbling. It's humbling on so many levels. It's humbling because of it reminds you of how tiny we are, and then it reminds you how much you don't comprehend much of anything.
It's a real Carl Sagan moment for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean that in
Hi.
a really good way.
Hey,
How you doing today?
we're
Hey,
doing
good.
fine. Thank you.
Hey, it all started with alien technology from Roswell, 1943, whatever year it was, in the early 40s.
47, I think.
We advanced so much since we got that alien craft and that technology. That's why we're at the state we're at right now. Keep that in mind now.
All right, okay.
We'll see ya.
Thank you for that. You like that?
I did. It's not really talk radio unless you get a call like that, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh,
That's
gosh.
great.
Okay. Oh, it's a little too soon.
Yeah. I mean, it's actually funny. The Carl Sagan thing. I've actually watched. We have Netflix.
Okay,
which is terrible unless you want to watch TV shows that you missed because you don't have cable, which we don't, or you were too young or too busy. So the Cosmos, like that whole. You remember that? Like, that was good.
Yeah.
I was watching. I was like.
Did you? Should I watch that? Does it because I don't understand anything having to do with this.
No, you should watch it. I mean, parts of it are like, they do that thing where they sort of go back to, they have people in period costume dressing up like Johannes Kepler and stuff like that, which is a little goofy. And some people, I think, Carl Sagan kind of wears on them. But like the sort of fundamental, like just decency of that guy is kind of what came through. And the thing that blew me away, and I've only gone through like a couple of the episodes, but at one point and this ran, and I remember it running when I was a kid, so it was probably around 1977 or 78, like at that time. And at that point, they were already talking about like concerns about global climate change.
You're kidding.
And they didn't have it all right or anything. And one of the things he mentioned was the danger of like a nuclear winter and some of that stuff. But the possibility, because he was talking about it in terms of the planet Venus, which is how they basically discovered the potential for a greenhouse effect, because of the sheer amount of carbon dioxide in that atmosphere. And Venus is like 4,000 billion. I mean, it's really hot on Venus. Like it would be harder to put people on Venus than on Mars.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So, and he was saying, if we keep
we're going to be
into
like
the air,
Venus.
like this could be the same kind of thing. 1980, 1981, maybe somewhere like that. But 30 years. And granted, you can't just operate on that. I mean, it was just an inkling. It was a hypothesis at that point. So it's not like we could have, figured it out at that point. But still, you think about, we've had all these years and we have done almost.
Well, House
nothing.
Republicans would be quick to tell you that it still is merely an hypothesis.
Yeah.
And speaking of House Republicans.
Yes, let us do.
These SOBs, they've got the gall now to suggest that the president is supposed to come on in and protect them from themselves. Boehner is without the ability to... They're about to shut the government down.
Right.
And nobody knows how to stop them. Listen to this quote from one of the loons. I saw that Biden found, you can't call people what you used to call them when you wanted to call them dumb because it's politically incorrect. Think of all the words that you can't use anymore. Excuse me, I'm going to say them just for historical information. Moron, cretin, imbecile.
Right.
What else?
Retarded. You can't say that, obviously.
Okay, right. All those things. But so what do you call somebody who you want to say is a total friggin' idiot? Neanderthal. Because nobody's here to speak for the poor Neanderthal.
Cro-Magnon also works for the same reason.
But, it just seems to me that I think I might want to speak out for the Neanderthals, who I always had a soft spot for.
Because you side with the underdog.
I do. And... we all have a little Neanderthal blood in us.
So they say.
Don't kid yourselves. And so because there's no one here to speak for them, I say Neanderthal is simply not a very nice thing because it hurts all the Neanderthals who aren't here.
Political correctness taken to its logical conclusion.
That is
what about
correct.
Australopithecines?
Australopithecus.
Yeah.
Pithecae. Okay, so here's one of the Neanderthals, Representative John Fleming of Louisiana. Obamacare is the most dangerous piece of legislation ever passed. It is the most existential threat to our economy that the country has seen since the Great Depression. So apparently we'll blow up the whole world before we'll give him 1 red cent.
I'm sorry. Was that the Great Depression that ended after a highly successful series of government interventions into the economy? Is that the benchmark we're using now?
So there are just 5 scheduled days when Congress is in session. It doesn't matter if they're in session or out of session. They do nothing. 5 scheduled legislative days stand between the House and a governmental shutdown. And it says right here in the paper that as of now, Republican leaders appear to have no idea how to stop it. Okay, so they're screaming that Obama should come in here and do something. I'm sure Obama's just thinking, hang yourself.
Yeah, I'm sure he is thinking that.
Hang your effing selves. And speaking of that,
yes.
The Republicans' intransigence have brought us, sequestration and all of that. Did you see what the FBI is now going to do? Because every governmental entity doesn't have the funds that it
I did not see what the FBI is going to do.
Oh, so they weren't sure what to do because it's sort of an important agency for national security and things like that.
They're just going to investigate stuff on Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays?
Pretty much true.
Yeah. Really?
No. Here's what they decided. Okay. Rather than do it in a piecemeal basis or furlough somebody, what they're going to do is they are going to, over the next year, they are simply going to shut down headquarters and all the offices around the country they figured they'll have to do it 10 times, 10 weekdays that they have to be out of commission because they cannot afford to pay anybody. So they said they'll do it on a Friday or Monday to give everybody a 3-day week. And, well, actually, they said they do it on a Friday or Monday because there's some expense to be done in sort of gearing back up or gearing down. So they want to take that away. But the FBI also, because of the sequester, has a hiring freeze. It has also substantially cut training of its employees and has no plans to buy any new vehicles or anything like this. Here's what the FBI deputy director said. This will degrade the capabilities of the Bureau in the long term, and nobody in Congress is thinking about that. Mistakes will be made down the road because of this, and they will be able to be traced back directly to these cuts. So they're saying, hey, if there's a terrorist attack here that we somehow miss, well, it could be because of you Republicans, thank you very much, taking our money away.
Right.
Just wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, what's going to happen?
Oh, you're going to say, he's got that look on his face. Prepare for a smart-ass remark. This is not something serious.
What's going to happen when the NSA can't read all of our emails?
There you
go. Do these people think?
That's the problem. Sometimes the NSA does things that are good.
Yeah, sure.
Right. I hope they've enjoyed my emails. Since I've known they've been looking over my shoulder, I've been trying to make them more interesting.
Yours are the ones they'll probably miss most of all when they're knocking off early on a Friday.
Perhaps. I've tried my best. It's the least I can do to sort of buck up the morale of government workers whose morale, I understand, is pretty low at the moment.
That reminds me of did you ever see the movie Little Murders?
That was a play.
Yeah, but then by Jules Feiffer, I think.
Yes. It was a wonderful cartoonist at
the Village Voice. And they did a movie with it with Elliot Gould, and there was a sequence in there where Elliot Gould talks about how he had been an activist at one point and became aware that his mail was being read, and so he began to address the letters to the guy at the FBI, and then eventually that guy showed up at his house. This is all in the movie, of course, and dressed up as like a repairman and basically tried to explain himself, and basically had a meltdown because he had been so, he was so conscience stricken or whatever. And Elliot Gould says in the movie, I realized if it was that easy to, undermine the system, then why bother?
Yeah, you agree with that?
That was one of those movies. You couldn't make that movie now. That was of a sensibility. Not that you couldn't put the film in the camera, but I just think the sensibility for that film just.
It's gone.
It's gone. That's sort of.
Well, that's pre 9/11.
Well, again, I think I think that movie came out in the 70s, so it was pre-Jess, and I think that's really what I'm trying to suggest is there was just in human experience, there was just sort of this cleavage point between how we felt about the world before Jess,
and then
how we felt about it after her advent.
Indeed. Boy, that's some heavy stuff. I think we should take a break to sort of regroup. We'll be right back.
Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com or call Lynn at 412-316-3381. Lynn Cullen Live will return in a moment.
When is grave digging hilarious? When it comes from the madcap mind of Martine McDonough, writer of In Bruges and the Lieutenant of Inishmore. Pick Theatre presents A Skull in Connemara, with Mick, the widow gravedigger, Martine, his numbskull assistant, Mary Johnny, the pochine-swilling granny, and Thomas, the detective wannabe. You'll laugh your own skull off at this show, playing September 12th through 28th. Visit picktheatre.org or call 412-561-6000 for tickets.
This week's Pittsburgh City Paper annual Fall Arts Preview is available now. Pick up one today for an in-depth look and an exciting season of arts and culture in the Burgh. Plus Graham Nash, Rancid, The Lion King, and news of the weird. Pittsburgh City Paper available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania and on the web at pghcitypaper.com. and on your smartphone with GPS-enabled listings at citypapermobile.com.
Now, it's back to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com.
Okay, we just want to, David, put a little addendum on what we were talking about the uranium reactor. Is that what it is? It
was plutonium. Thank you very much.
Oh, plutonium, uranium. I know there are things you're not supposed to touch, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Hey, we go to war over these kinds of questions.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. But David says Voyager actually has no propulsion system. It is flying strictly on momentum from flinging around the planets.
Yeah, like the gravity slingshot. Yep.
Well, so can it direct itself at all?
I think it was. Now it cannot because there's nothing to.
So it's just being. Well, what happens when it's then free of the planets?
It's just coasting. That's what it's doing now.
What momentum is making it coast? Still,
because space is a vacuum. Essentially, there's nothing to slow it down. So once it built up, once it cleared the gravitational pull of the planets, there's nothing to hold it back or to urge it forward. It's just coasting on its own.
Can you imagine how lonely it is, and maybe even frightened? All around it, nothing but darkness.
Hey, we've all been there, baby.
Oh, my God. So the power system, he says, is strictly to run the instruments.
Yes, and he's probably quite right. I certainly wouldn't disagree with that.
No. That seems absolutely correct. And PJ has sent us a picture of a hair follicle, which is exactly what that graph looked like.
But he also sent the Pittsburgh Spirit logo, and I thought there was a resemblance there, too.
Yeah, but that's looking a little bit like a... Oh, don't knit your brows at me.
I just want you to say it.
No, I'm not going to say it.
I don't see it.
A semi-tumescent male...
Yeah, maybe do a perv.
Okay.
Anyway.
So what'd you think of... Would you hire Vladimir Putin as an op-ed writer? Did you read it?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, what'd you think?
I'll speak up for anybody that makes Robert Menendez feel like throwing up. That's the power of, whatever. I mean, the problem with that guy is it's just like, I mean, no matter what you say, and I happen to think that you can't help but like take that proposal seriously and look at it.
Yes.
But it's still coming from a guy. I mean, essentially, they arm the Syrians. That, like, the stuff that the Syrians are using to like
comes from them.
Machine gun and blow up their own people.
That's Russia.
Yeah, so it's a little rich.
Yeah, a little hard to take.
But on the other hand, it is hard to imagine how somehow our Nobel Prize winning Democratic nominee somehow ends up looking more anxious for war than the former KGB agent who runs.
Yeah.
Russia.
Yeah.
That is something.
Well,
to
that's
study.
what's so ridiculous about this whole thing. I mean, how everybody is where they're not supposed to be, technically. I mean, or historically, not where you expect them. Anyway, do you know how he got that into the New York Times?
No.
Well, I
thought he just sent it in like everybody else.
No.
Oh. Okay.
It was placed there. Actually, it was submitted on his behalf. Mm-hmm. By his public relations agents.
I guess that makes sense.
And you know who his PR agents are?
I'm anxious to find out now.
Ketchum.
Yeah.
Ketchum, which is one of the largest American advertising agencies.
Oh, yeah.
Ketchum. Ketchum has made, according to the Wall Street Journal, nearly $50 million from the Russians since 2006.
So, just so I understand, do they represent him personally, or do they represent the Russian government?
No, they represent the government and the big oil company there.
Of course.
the state
not Gazprom, but the other one.
OAO Gazprom.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Yeah. So to lift public opinion of the Russian leader in the United States, the Kremlin hired Ketchum in 2006.
God, what does this mean for the future? Like, is he going to be in like toothpaste ads and stuff? Like we're going to be seeing him on The View? Like,
So how would... See, what's interesting is you would think that's legal that an American PR firm does PR for foreign governments? And, it is, as long as they... because the Wall Street Journal found this out, because you have to sort of file things with this with the U.S. Justice Department under what is called the Foreign Agents Registration Act. So Ketchum is acting as a foreign agent.
Man, that sounds badass. That's better than account executive. Like if any of our sales reps are listening to that, they're going to all want to be foreign agents.
I mean, if you're a fan of Mad Men... Yeah. This is where Mad Men ends up going. They end up, they'll sell you ketchup, they'll sell you cars, and they'll sell you Vladimir Putin and Russian policy. It don't make no difference.
Huh.
Wow.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
Definitely.
I don't know what else to say.
So they're not, these aren't ads like come visit Russia and see the sites.
Oh, no, they really are sort of, because, sometimes you'll be reading a paper and there'll be like a 2-4-page supplement.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so it includes that, but
they
then
do
it's
that
also
kind of work for
this
them
kind
too.
of thing. Okay.
Right, they'll do whatever we think will help you counter the negative image that Americans may have. And it says in here that Ketchum insists that Putin wrote it, and I doubt that too. He might have signed off on it, but it shows a very it really was good in that he wrote in a tone that the American ear was very receptive to. And don't tell me Vladimir Putin knows how to do that.
Yeah.
So it's people in the Kremlin who have probably worked for a gazillion years trying to get inside. It's why they had those spies living in the country, just living like regular Americans, just trying desperately to understand the American
I should hire one of those guys. Teach me how regular Americans live and think.
Well,
I bet that would be interesting to see like what his first draft was. We shall bury you. Scratch, 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 scratch. I don't think that's quite the message we want to start out with, Vladimir.
Oh, and I thought the funniest line was where he said, "My relations with the President Obama have been warming or have been." I'm thinking,
oh yeah.
Oh yeah. All right, back to astronomy just for a second, because Raymond writes, Lynn and Potter, Carl Sagan was to popular science what Fred Rogers was to self-esteem. Yeah. And, okay, that was that. And then that cop who shot his friend in the bar is a longtime Lawrencevillean, as is Ray. That means he lives in Lawrenceville.
Not that he's a villain.
No.
Yeah.
He was blown up in Lebanon when that Marine barracks was attacked during the Reagan years. Well, he obviously wasn't blown up, but yes, he was a survivor of that attack, which killed a lot of people from Western PA. He was blown up in Lebanon when the Marine barracks was attacked during the Reagan years. He was never right after that and should never have been on the force. PTSD is a hell of a thing to live with, a tragedy all around. So Ray has decided that this was a PTSD. I don't know. Sounds like drunk. Just sounds.
Yeah, but that's
not
necessarily a inconsistency between those two things.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I do. You do have to say, and I don't know. I mean, I'll take Ray's word for all of that. I don't know one way or the other. I mean, I would say very often some of these cases that we've looked at, some of the road rage incidents and things like that.
They are veterans.
You just kind of wonder, even veterans or not veterans, you do wonder if these guys have these kinds of anger issues.
They don't.
What kind of screening process is really being used there? And I don't know that anybody's really taken the lid off of that particular question and poked around.
Well, I think a lot of people would think sort of a measure of aggressiveness is like a good quality for a police officer to have, and this sort of macho sense. On the other hand, I don't know that that stands up to any scrutiny at all.
Well, I mean, there are various ways in which this takes shape. A preference for hiring veterans for those positions. So
that's right.
So maybe that's something to double down on and take a look at down the road, if it turns out to be as what Ray says.
Oh yeah, like that'll happen.
Oh, that will look at it?
No, that will take veterans' preferences away.
I don't know that they should be taken away, but it does seem to me that if that's the pond that you're kind of fishing for, you want to make sure you would want to kind of step up your attempt to weed out any of those potential problems down the road.
You don't want a lot of ticking time bombs.
Yeah.
Did you see the story in the paper over the weekend about the guy?
You'll have to be more specific.
Because you jumped in before I could finish the sentence.
I know.
About the guy who is an arborist.
No, I don't think so.
Don't laugh, because this gets really brutal. And he was called in. He volunteered after 9/11. It's hard to imagine to climb into the trees around where Flight 93 went down.
Oh, I saw the story you're talking about.
Oh, boy.
But I didn't, yeah.
Well, apparently what he found in those tree branches has haunted him ever since, and he has PTSD. And it took a long time for him to get he struggles.
Yeah.
He struggles with it.
Yeah.
Can't get these images out of his head. Hard to imagine.
Yeah.
And we are protected from all of that horror. I mean, we the people, the public. And we were talking about this somewhat yesterday when Sokolowski was here, about how it became a journalistic taboo to show any of the people jumping from the towers. And we, a marvelous writer, Tom Junod, Junod, writes for Esquire, wrote a very long piece about it, and really makes you think about what is that about, that taboo, and how, who does it serve, and what is it? Why do we all decide somehow there's no conversation about the hundreds of people who died in that manner, and that somehow it's considered pornographic or voyeuristic to in any way even see an image of of the people that that chose that way. And it was, we had a really good discussion about it. It just, I don't get it, and I don't get it. A number of papers the first day did show those pictures, and they were deluged to a one by outraged readers. But why?
Yeah, I mean,
why? I mean, obviously you find yourself as a journalist and as a professor of this kind of thing.
Just an instructor. Just an adjunct.
Okay, just an adjunct. In other words, he was paid less than minimum wage. But really, what? I recommend the article because
I'll have to read it.
Fascinating. It was fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, any of those things there's always the sort of balancing thing between the thing as a public event, as a news thing that people need to know about, balancing that against the very legitimate, I guess it seems weird to say, the sort of privacy interests or whatever, even though nobody knows who those folks were.
Right.
But I think we do kind of have a feeling of wanting to sort of put a circle around that and allow people. I mean, what I've seen people say is that in those circumstances, the circumstances in which you jump out of a building knowing that you will die as a result of doing that, that's sort of the last thing about your life you can kind of assert.
That's right.
And that the desire to sort of respect that.
But that's why assertion. I would argue that those people, it was a heroic gesture. It was a heroic gesture, and I don't know that I don't know that I'd say it was heroic, because there may well have been people, but there may well have been people who did not make that decision or were not able to. What do you mean didn't? I mean, there might have been people who didn't jump and took some other approach to their situation. They might have that were heroic too. But I'm just saying, it is taking control.
Yeah.
It is saying, I am going to, if I'm going to die, I'm going to at least take a measure of control.
Right, but then I guess that fact...
doesn't mean that those who didn't are not.
No, I know, but I'm saying, so we agree there that's the thing. But then there's, I think the flip side of that is but then their image of what they did is outside of their control, right? And then it becomes something that other people look at and use and do whatever with. And I think maybe that's part of the tension there that people feel about it is the very thing that we respect is they're kind of asserting themselves is now being taken away from them by showing their image in ways that we'll never know, of course, whether they would want to or not want to use it that way or be seen that way.
Well, but also, they didn't ask for it in any way,
right?
But they became part of an iconic, historic moment,
right?
And in that regard, I think, unfortunately, you lose a measure of your privacy in that regard.
But that's exactly
because. Well, here's another thing that he brings up in the article: the picture of Senator Robert Kennedy, either dying with his eyes open, lying on his back in the kitchen, having just been shot. His widow, soon, screaming at people and trying to get them to go away. All those we were privy to all of that. Would that picture
run today?
Yeah.
Probably not.
No.
We definitely have changed.
So then what is the difference? Have we become what is the difference? That picture would not air today. It would not.
Right.
And there are a number of others that are iconic historical pictures that now it has been decided that somehow we should not see. And I resent people deciding these things for me, frankly.
And the irony is, if you want to think about it, the irony is as real life images of violence and tragedy are no longer shown, there's just been an increase in the amount of simulated violence you can see on a TV show in a movie.
Exactly.
So that is interesting. We've got a call here, but we should pick this up in a second.
Hello, caller.
Oh, go finish your thought. I'm sorry.
No.
No, go ahead. I'll get to it. Don't worry about it.
This cropped up yesterday. It was really driving me crazy when you were talking about it. I don't buy the heroism, taking their control over their own. I think, and I don't mean that in a terrible, if I don't know what way. I think it's a tragic, desperate last act of someone that has no other choice.
Yeah.
They probably couldn't breathe. There was probably a huge amount of heat. I don't think that it's so much. I think painting it as being heroic is putting is putting a good spin on it. I think one of the reasons we don't want to see these things anymore is because we can't put a good spin on them.
Yeah.
And we can't make them jingoistic. And we're so used to doing that. Those individual shots, those people falling, were an individual. That was just humanity laid bare, one individual person, and I don't think we want to see that anymore.
Why?
Because I think Chris mentioned earlier about us not having a world where you could make a movie like that anymore. I think we've progressed past the point where we maybe it's a maturity level of our society that we can't accept the fact that people die in horrible ways and we have no control over it, and it has nothing to do with God or Satan or anything like that. It's just an awful, like I said, humanity laid bare, and we can't turn it into something that we can call heroic or we can call evil or we can wrap our head around.
But
and therefore we choose to deny it somehow.
Why is it progress to retreat from reality? I
don't think it is progress.
That was a part of that day.
I think it's it speaks poorly of our culture. I think it speaks poorly of of us being able to realize that there are bad things in the world and that people die in horrible individual ways. And that, you can't say, oh, they're heroic, or, oh, that was absolute evil, that was Satan doing this. It is just humanity laid bare, and we don't want to deal with it. Americans we're shielded from the bodies coming back from war. We don't want to see these things as a society anymore.
Okay,
because
it
can't be spun by the madmen like you were talking about.
Okay, well,
that's the way we like to treat things.
Okay,
anymore.
I misunderstood because I thought you were saying that we are better.
No, we're terribly.
I think we're
softer.
We're softer, and we're more protected by these institutions like media, who decide what we can handle and what we can't. Now, Potter's going to say that's not what's going on. I don't know, but Potter, you want to say something? Because I got to get a break in here.
Why don't you get a break and we'll come back and do
Okay,
some
hey,
stuff.
caller, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yes.
Okay, bye. We'll be right back.
More is on the way with Lynn Cullen Live.
Go to bergbargains.com for great deals on gift cards from your favorite local restaurants, bars, museums, attractions, and shows. This week, 50% off tickets to the City Theater's Tony Award-winning play, Vanya and Sonia and Masha and Spike. Supplies are limited. bergbargains.com, Pittsburgh's best bargains. bergbargains.com.
This is Les Ludwig, an independent candidate for mayor of the city of Pittsburgh. I ask for your vote on November 5th, and here's why. Some candidates play politics. I stand for a secure position in regards to fracking, one that's based on my background as a food technologist and opportunities that were presented in my lifetime in the dairy industry when I was a food chemist for the United States Army in Washington, D.C., and the dairy products literally stunk. Someone had to go ahead and take a stand. I did the chemistry, and I stood tall. What are we doing here with fracking? We have a fight between money and public safety. No one has defined clearly where the danger level is in the distance from the wells. Until we take the moratorium for 3 years and find out what that answer is, I have to stand on the side of public health, not on the side of $500 million of money. It's a mistake, because when we poison our water, we literally sentence ourselves to big trouble. I ask you for your vote and the question of standing tall when it comes to making a decision about fracking. Let's keep Allegheny County and its citizens safe. I thank you.
Come to Little's for all of your back-to-school needs. Little's has everything for all ages to stay in style for this upcoming school season. Check out the large selection from Doc Marten, Steve Madden, UGG, Clarks, Lely Kelly, New Balance, and much, much more. Don't forget to come visit this season's colorful handbag selection as well. Little Shoes, Pittsburgh's largest family shoe store, 5850 Forbes Avenue in Squirrel Hill.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn at pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen Live.
Okay, here we are.
So here's the thing. It used to be the practice. You can go over to the Andy Warhol Museum and go up on one of those floors and see.
Well, that's
what
Sokolowski brought up. You brought up Ouija,
right.
the infamous photographer.
And people used to look at
the Daily News or something.
So and these were photos that would run on the front page of your photos of horrific car accidents with bodies hanging out the driver's side window and all that. We don't do that now either. And I think you'd be hard pressed to argue.
Neither of those are iconic historical.
Okay, but let me just kind of. I mean, but there's the context that's here too of a sort of broader public attitude. We don't do that now, and I think we're better off for it, right? Nobody would argue that somehow it was. I don't think anybody now would argue that we were a more realistic people or that we were somehow more enlightened because we were willing to look at photos of dead people in automobiles. But, so I think there's a question. I don't think you can just say that, well, it's this kind of, we need to be protected from the world and da-da-da. I think there are people who do work very hard at that. The caller correctly, I think, noted the fact that we don't show photos of the coffins coming off the planes the way we used to do. And that's clearly a decision made to serve a political agenda. It is to clearly shield people from the American public from the consequences of their decisions.
It's airbrushing reality.
But where I disagree and where I think there's a distinction, or even a distinction with the Kennedy shooting, is John Kennedy was a figure. Robert Kennedy was a figure, and John Kennedy was too, who made decisions to become public figures. These people, what is the crime? The crime of 9/11 is that people were forced into history. They were forced into history. They did not choose to. They did not get up that morning with the intention of becoming icons of a moment. Exactly. And so and that's that's the whole nature of terrorism. Is it takes people who have nothing to do with anything, and makes them the consequences of history. And in some ways, then, does the photo then itself, does taking those photos and publishing those photos not in some ways continue that act? And I understand what you're saying, and I'm not saying the photographers who shot those photos or the newspapers that published them were in league with the terrorists or anything like that. I'm saying that where some of where people is coming from is that feeling of haven't these people and their families suffered enough without me needing to look at it, and in some ways feeling complicit if you do see it. Okay.
But again, we were talking about some of these iconic photos of people who didn't ask to be. Right. And some of them had a great impact on what happened later. So the naked little girl whose clothes had been burned off by napalm running toward the camera. Yep. The police chief in Saigon blowing that guy's head off, executing him right there on the street. These are photos that would they run today and are now more softened, airbrushed reality, or...
I think the photo of that girl would still run today. And do you know what one reason?
Well, because she doesn't live here.
That's right. I think there is, and even though I just held up,
if that were a little American girl,
it would not have happened.
Okay, thank you very much.
That's right. No, there's even for everything that I just said, it's true. There's still basic tribalism at work. Yeah, of course, it's our sensitivities.
All right, caller,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Hey, George from Vermont.
Hey, George.
What's up?
Hey, Chris. Welcome to the Friday morning.
Oh yeah.
Breakfast Club.
Good to be here.
Lynn.
Yes, sir.
I was so glad to hear you starting off with positive stuff, including the space program and the Voyager things this morning.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Before we spiraled into our cycle of despair.
Well, this is not despair. This is a conversation.
Yeah, it's good.
Right. But then you got into a subject that's more weighty and everything, and it struck a nerve with me that I wanted to put in my 2 cents.
Go ahead.
I think my take on it is that, because I've seen it over the years, for the last 50 years, actually, that like with the Vietnam War, the gruesome pictures were shown, both still and video in the news and everything. But ever since the end of that war and everything, American journalism has cleansed and expunged that from the news media, and all the way up until today in various forms. And what my judgment is that I think the American public has become completely infanticized, you might say, or juvenile.
Infantilized, yeah.
And doesn't want to face reality and wants to stay in a fantasy world.
I agree.
And here's an example of other media throughout the world. When you tune to other media, because I go to BBC, I go to the German media, and I'll go to Al Jazeera English and Al Jazeera America and all kinds of, and they show stuff. Mm-hmm. And then I look back at American news and everything, and it's cleansed. Yep. It's cleansed in certain ways, which includes body parts and everything. And when was the last time you saw maybe a dead American soldier in the American media from any of these wars out there?
Yeah. You don't even see them when they're unidentified.
Civilian.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Right. And so I think my judgment is that it's America wants to stay into a juvenile fantasy world. The rest of the world is seeing all the terrible stuff that happens in life, which may be natural things or policy from foreign affairs or war or anything like that. But America here, we blissfully and purposely block that out to think that there's another reality going on that fits in our point of view.
Well, it's absolutely true. And then what Potter pointed out, and we're never going to have time to get into it, is then we have a huge entertainment culture which thrives on depictions of much more horrific violence against human beings.
Right.
It's mind-blowing. It really is. The whole thing just doesn't compute.
But let me give you two quick samples of an experience, too. I was at what they called a ground safety course in a theater, at an Air Force theater, where we had to go on a commander's call and watch movies and listen to the commander once a month. And it still sticks in my mind when a guy showed a movie of accidents on the highway.
Yeah, right.
And he showed body parts and everything. I think it's a classic movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
I had never seen such an effect on a large group of people, which was our whole squadron of like 350 guys and women.
They used to show that in Driver's Ed.
Yeah, I saw that.
Total quietude.
Yeah.
Drove their vehicles so slow. It was just so stunning the effect of reality had on them. That I just never forget that.
Yeah.
And the last thing, the Kennedy gruesome shots were bought up. The Zapruder films were bought up, and we never saw them, and we never saw the still photos until 25 years after the assassination.
Okay. Hey, thanks.
So that's my take.
Okay, George.
Thanks, man.
Good talk to you. Right,
bye. Heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Hard to, we could talk until we were blue in the face. Ray, as often the case, has, I think, something that is really right on. Here it is. We should not be surprised that our images of 9/11 and the wars are edited. We have systematically created a society where truth would derail us. All the commercials and news outlets and schools and political parties seek to obfuscate and deceive us so that we buy their energy drinks or versions of reality. Truth is the enemy of capitalism. Ain't that the... I think it was really... That's... Oh... And what do you mean, avenge the CWP5?
Yeah, I don't know what that's...
Communist Workers' Party 5? Socialist Workers' Party. Avenge the CWP5?
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Neither of us are...
We'll get an email schooling us right after.
Okay, quickly. And, hey, I just want to point out that in regard to same-sex marriage, that ruling that came out telling the guy in Montgomery County to cease and desist is not the be-all and end-all. That was brought by the health department on really all sort of technicality. It had nothing to do with the constitutionality of the state's DOMA law, essentially.
People should also know that ruling was handed down by Dan Pellegrini, who's a pretty good judge, actually.
Yes, exactly right. And I mean, it is not an incorrect finding legally, but there is another case that is in the federal court system, and that is the one that is spearheaded by the ACLU and Pittsburgh's own Vic Walczek, and that proceeds apace. And so just so you don't get all hot and bothered about that. And just because Dorothea asked, I'll get it in, Dorothea, but we're going to have to end on it. Dorothea is outraged and wants us to, before we leave the show, I should mention the fact that Rich Fitzgerald, Allegheny County executive, says he's going to veto a bill that would disallow fracking in county parks. So in other words, he's going to allow fracking in county parks.
Right.
And obviously...
Not just allow it, but really encourage it.
Encourage it. And Dorothea obviously thinks that's a really bad idea. Okay, and this also, again, with the pictures. The picture of the priest at Ground Zero, Michael what was his name? The priest for the chaplain of the fire department, a pretty openly gay priest, Michael, blanking on his name, and he was down there ministering to and then he was killed. And there is an iconic picture of him being carried, his limp body, that is a brutally beautiful picture. And PJ writes, didn't think about it when I called, but what about the picture of the priest? We've had no problem looking at or showing that image. Is it because he was able to be viewed as a fallen hero / martyr? Bad things do happen to our exceptional nation unless we can view ourselves in a less than average way. Yeah. This is why I'd be hard pressed to be an editor, because my tendency is always to let people see what has happened. I remember when Bud Dwyer committed suicide on camera. This is a Pennsylvania official who at a press conference took out a gun and blew his head off. And I believe one television station in Pittsburgh,
it was the Channel 11.
Channel 11
because WIIC
did air it once, and then they did not air it anymore. Everybody else decided not to air it. I remember arguing strenuously at Channel 4 that we should air it, and everybody looked at me like I was out of my mind. I just think that when things okay, so why don't you do something like that? Why? Everybody agreed.
But that was 35 years ago, so I think it's just interesting that maybe this trend is not
older
quite
than we thought.
Yeah, it was a little older than we thought.
But it was very gruesome. Yeah. I mean, it was. Yes. I mean, somebody blowing their brains out.
Actually,
I did see the video. Yeah. And, it's not easy to see, but you could, if there were a lot of, get children out of the room if you want to. But I guess, I don't know.
But at that point, why are you even doing it?
Yeah, then why are you doing it? Then it does seem just totally voyeuristic.
Right.
Okay.
You were wrong. Your colleagues were right.
I was wrong. I figured I was wrong because nobody agreed with me. So I thought, I must be wrong. But I just didn't think it was fair that I saw it, but you can't see it. I saw it because I just don't I don't know.
That gets into a broader discussion about the role of journalists.
I know. I'm sort of like an anarchist when it comes to that. Just let it all hang out. Okay, so that's it. That was interesting. Thank you so very much. Such a smart audience.
It was. Excellent calls.
And thank you so very much.
Good to be here.
And just get better.
I will. All right, have a good weekend, everybody.
Trooper.
Bye.
Go Bucks.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.